It is another episode of the Juice on the Cuse podcast. Wes Cheng alongside Brad Bierman. Thanks so much for joining us on this Monday, December 16, 2024. We've got so much to talk about, and we begin today's show on a couple interesting football notes. Syracuse had a lot of recruits on campus, but Brad, we have a football legend coming to the ACC, Bill Belichick, joining ACC rival UNC. What an interesting story. What do you think of the greatest NFL coach ever coming to coach college?
Well, Wes, I think it's a fantastic move by North Carolina. I mean, instantly, in one stroke, bringing a coach of Bill Belichick's status as, arguably the greatest coach certainly in pro football history, it instantly rejuvenated the football brand at North Carolina. And the Board of Trustees looked at this as simple investment. Let's invest in Bill Belichick. Let's get donors to invest in the program, into NIL. Let's raise the standards. And that ripple effect is going to be felt on all the other athletic programs at North Carolina. And we all know that sports is the porch front for colleges, and chancellors and athletic directors and board of trustees love that exposure. And North Carolina, in my estimate, has hit a grand slam with the hiring of Bill Belichick. Nonstop talk in the days after. Can you imagine what it's going to be like next July here in Charlotte at the ACC football kickoff event? It's going to be an overflow media event, and it's going to be a must-see. So great move. And now how it affects Syracuse? Well, obviously it does in recruiting. And Syracuse had its own big move last year with Fran Brown coming aboard. Of course, not the name recognition of Bill Belichick, but name recognition coming from national champion Georgia. And obviously – changing the complete dynamic of Syracuse recruiting. So great hire for North Carolina, great for the ACC. How good will that be for Syracuse on the recruiting trail? Well, you'll find out a lot more sooner than I will, Wes, when you talk to the recruits as you do on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I can't wait for Bill Belichick because they play at Syracuse this year. UNC will come, and I can't wait for Bill Belichick to give his press conference in that stuffy, kind of small Syracuse press area with all the media overflow. That's going to be an interesting sight to see, Brad. Couple things from the weekend I wanted to highlight. As we talked about at the top of the show, more than 24 recruits on campus over the weekend, both in the transfer portal and also in high school. I had a chance to catch up with 12 of them. So a few names to keep an eye on. I want to start with Tyreek Hill, 2025 New Jersey running back from Northern New Jersey. He takes an official visit to Syracuse over the weekend. By all indications, everything goes well. I do expect that recruitment to move quickly. As you know, Syracuse lost Mo McCormick to Boston College later in the cycle, so Hill figures to be his replacement at that running back position. He has an offer from Massachusetts. I know that the coaching staff really views Hill as a shifty, change of pace back who can contribute down the line. Brad, two other recruits I wanted to talk about. Gavin Sidwar, 2026 quarterback from Pennsylvania, previously committed to Rutgers. He opens his recruitment in October. He's been on the Syracuse campus twice, was on campus over the weekend. He tells me that Syracuse is certainly in the running and that he plans on deciding his college destination as early as spring. He also mentioned to me that he spent the majority of the trip with offensive coordinator Jeff Nixon, quarterbacks coach Nunzio Campanelli, and they told him that he's their top quarterback on their board. So certainly a name you want to keep an eye on. The third person I wanted to talk about from the weekend, 2027 offensive lineman Carter Jones, the Virginia prospect, visited Syracuse over the weekend, earned his first offer from Syracuse. So this is the quote he gave me. It was great. I enjoyed every part of it. I'm so blessed to have received this offer from Syracuse, end quote. So enthusiastic about his visit. Tells me he definitely wants to get back on campus soon. So just a really big weekend for Syracuse football, both in the transfer portal, hosting at least half a dozen recruits from that end, and again, 24 recruits from the high school, and really, really exciting weekend. And part of the things that they did on campus, part of their activities, was to attend that basketball game. Brad, Syracuse falling to 5-5 with a 75-71 loss to arch rival Georgetown on that Saturday. From my vantage point, this team is in real trouble. Brad, what did you see in that game?
Well, first of all, Wes, tying over the football recruiting, I said, why did the team have to lose to Georgetown in this game in the Dome with all those football recruits on hand? Well, it certainly didn't ruin the total atmosphere of the weekend, as you outlined, with the great responses and comments from the recruits that are really loving the Syracuse program as it's building. And the pure definition of mediocrity, when I was looking up the stats, Wes, after 10 games for the Orange, Giving up 79.5 points a game, that's 333rd in the nation out of 355 D1 teams. Scoring 79.3. So right there, giving up as much as they're scoring, a little bit better from a scoring average just because teams can't shoot today. And not being able to shoot from long distance, that's been Syracuse's other problem. 33% for the year, just not having a real threat out there that teams can respect. And as we saw with Georgetown going to the zone, well, other teams obviously are going to see that now, and that does not foreshadow well for the team in the games upcoming, starting with Maryland and Brooklyn.
Yeah, Brad, I want to at least start on one good note, which is that it seems like Jaquan Carlos has found his footing. He played 39 minutes, 15 points, 5 assists. He was really persona non grata for the first part of the season, really struggling out there, but we're seeing signs of life from him. Another guy, his starting backcourt mate, Elijah Moore. He's entered the starting lineup now with JJ starting out indefinitely with that wrist issue. I know he was 4-14 from the field, but Syracuse desperately needs scoring. He's one of the top shooters on the team as a freshman, which leads me to my next point. What is going on with Chris Bell? I don't know, Brad. 0 for 4 from the field, 0 for 3 from downtown. He seems completely lost in the offense. He's never been a major contributor on the defensive end. So I don't know if it's just a confidence issue, whether there's an issue with the coaching staff or there's an issue with a chemistry problem. But this is a very important problem the Orange are going to need to solve. Only 4 for 16 from downtown as a team. Syracuse is now officially the worst shooting team in the ACC right now. Brad, I liken back to 18 years ago. Jim Boeheim went on his famous rant about Jerry McNamara. He said Syracuse wouldn't have won 10 effing games without him. Of course, he didn't say effing. That may be the case this year if we don't see significant improvement. I don't know if you agree with that assessment.
Well, as things project right now, looking at Maryland, you'd have to say a loss on a neutral court at this point, and then Bucknell to finish the non-conference games. Okay, 6-6 going into 19 more ACC games. That projects to me no better than 16-15, maybe 15-16. Point being, this team would have to play the ACC tournament to have any shot and a long shot NCAA tournament bid. So, it does not project well. And with Chris Bell, Wes, I wanted to add this, really been bewildering to me. Spent a lot of time with him at ACC Media Day and really thought how thoughtful he was, all his answers, discussing what he projected for this team to be and his personal contributions, and have not seen what he was projecting back in October. So it really is puzzling, to me mentally, purely. And that's going to be up to Red Autry and the staff to get him in the groove. They need him. Obviously, they need his scoring. And if J.J. Starling can come back, in relatively short notice, this team can develop. But ACC is just too balanced. And playing on the road, Syracuse cannot win traditionally. So does not project very well, as you say.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. Brendan Carney will join us when we return. This is the Juice on the Cuse podcast. This is the Bet Online read. Bet Online continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds from everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, NHL to UFC. Head on to Bet Online today and don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, the game starts here. We're back on the Juice on the Cuse podcast. Wes Cheng here with you. Let's keep going on football. We are thrilled to be joined by our great friend, former Syracuse punter and captain, Brendan Carney. Brendan, always appreciate the time. How are you today?
Hey, Wes. Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks. Appreciate you bringing me back on. Such a great season to be a part of and watch, and, happy to chat.
Yeah, and Brendan, I want to get you started on this one. We had you on in preseason in late July to give your win prediction. You said on this very program, Syracuse would get to 8-4, and I think at the time that prediction was pretty bold. Turns out we were both wrong in a good way. Syracuse got to 9 wins, so you had to like what you saw this year.
I did. Definitely exceeded all expectations. 9 wins for a first-year head coach was, it's a great accomplishment for the program. for the community, especially for the players. I'm certainly not going to look back and play the, what if game if they had beaten BC or if they had beaten Pitt or Stanford. Certainly just going to be happy with our focus on kind of the 9 wins and just how great of a season that was for those guys, and kind of build from there. Hopefully they're kind of, viewing it that way up there at the program, just kind of building, going forward into the future. I think he did a great job in the portal last year, getting guys like Kyle McCord and Jackson Meeks and Fadil Diggs. I mean, those guys became big-time contributors to the program immediately. I think he did a great job keeping a lot of the guys that we had. So like a LaQuint Allen, or even, some of the guys on the defense like Marlo Wax and Justin Barron or OG even. I was a little bit nervous that maybe after Dino was dismissed last year that those guys might, head into the portal and just kind of see what their options were. But Fran did a great job of kind of going out and into the portal himself, getting big time guys and showing them that, he was committed immediately in his first year. I think kind of looking at Kyle McCord, you got to appreciate what happened with the offense this year. I mean, I don't think in my 15 years or 20 years following Syracuse that we've ever seen an offense like this. I mean, he shattered, I think, every record that, there was to have. He's kind of up for, a lot of those postseason awards too, which is great. I think you get a guy like Jackson Meeks that, he became a huge contributor to the team midway through the season. So I'm looking forward to having him back. And all those guys, like I mentioned before, like a Trevor Pena, I was so happy to see him have such a great year. I think he's, he suffered some injuries the last couple of years, but man, he had such a fantastic year for us. So I was so happy and so excited to watch him play. Obviously OG was, doing his thing. And then LaQuint Allen, I mean, I think, he was the MVP in my opinion. That guy is just like, get him the ball, whenever he wants it. He was so tough. Then I think you look at the defense side of the ball and they kind of became the bend but don't break type of defense for us this year. They, were in a lot of tough situations. I think early on they lost Marlo Wax, kind of the core of the defense. That was kind of a big hit to them. But I thought Robinson did a really good job. He had a challenge up front with like moving from a 3-3-5, type scheme over to his, which was going to be a challenge for those guys. But, he did a really good job handling it. I thought the guys stepped up. They, when they lost Marlo, he was able to kind of move some personnel around, get guys in different positions. I think Fadil Diggs was playing like linebacker at some times. They dropped down Justin Barron at linebacker. So those guys really stepped up when Marlo was out. I know we lost some guys on the D-line late in the season too, which is tough. But, you got to give credit to the young guys that kind of stepped up and filled in their shoes. They did a really great job and kept us in a lot of those games and allowed the offense to really, put points on the board and give us an opportunity to win some games. So, yeah, I'm extremely happy. You got a first-year guy, head coach, coming in, getting 9 wins. So I think there's a lot to be happy about in this season and a lot to, certainly look forward to in the future.
So, Brendan, you and I text throughout the season. One of the things we texted about early on, especially, I think we were texting a lot in that Holy Cross game, was the issues with the special teams. You mentioned a lot about defense and offense in your first question, but as you always tell me, and we have to know that there's 3 phases to the football game and special teams being that 3rd phase. So field goals, punt protection, point after touchdowns, all issues. In the last half of the season, they improved significantly. You're a former Division I and NFL punter. What did you see as the biggest reason for the improvement?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of cringing in those first couple of weeks with, the mistakes after mistakes that we were kind of seeing in that phase of the game. You never want your special teams to kind of be at the forefront with issues or when it comes to issues. And obviously Villano is a new special teams coordinator coming in. So, there's a lot of change and personnel he needs to get used to and understand kind of where guys might fit in. So it was nice to see in some of the press conferences, Fran, kind of called it out. And, kind of behind the scenes, they were really trying to work things out there in that perspective. And essentially that's what they did. They changed up some personnel. I think you saw, the linebacker McDonald got moved into the punt protection. And, I thought kind of things settled from that perspective there. It looks like they had to go through a couple of kickers in order to find their guy. But, I think they were willing to put into work. They gave the guys the opportunity. And, I think kind of midway through the season, you saw things kind of calm down from a special teams perspective. So, it was tough to watch in the beginning, obviously, because you're so focused on the offense and defense, and now you've got special teams issues. But I give a ton of credit to Fran and to Coach Villano to kind of ironing that out, and the guys that the personnel that they did put in there to stepped up and kind of really helped get that train back on the right track. And I know. Looking out to next year, I know Denenberg, put his name into the portal. So we're gonna have to kind of look for someone to replace him on kickoffs. I thought he had a really strong leg there. So hopefully one of the guys that they have now can do that, or maybe look to bring in somebody from the outside. And then I believe Stonehouse is back next year. I thought he had a really good year once they kind of got ironed out a lot of those issues. And I believe he got maybe like an honorable mention in the ACC. I thought maybe that was a little bit of a snub, but I think he's going to come back next year as a senior and be the top guy in the ACC and certainly a top guy in the country. And fully expect year two under Fran, under Villano, that that should be a pretty tight group in 2025.
So we'll get you out of here on this one, Brendan. The last time you were on the program, you were talking about meeting Fran Brown for the first time on that alumni virtual call. So here we are 4 months later. He has a body of work behind him. I think I know the answer to this, but how would you grade his first season at Syracuse?
Yeah, look, I give him, I didn't get a whole lot of these in school, but I give him an A. I certainly think he, I think he exceeded all expectations. 9 wins in his first season, going for his 10th next week or in a couple weeks at the Holiday Bowl in San Diego. I think he has really come in and done a really good job with the program, and as a first-year guy. And I know that's really hard to do. Typically it takes years and years to kind of get your culture embedded in the program and guys buying in, and you got a little bit of a change, from the former players and all that. But he's done a really good job. I think he, at least from a recruiting standpoint, I know he's a top recruiter in the country. He really understands, kind of young men and, kind of how to approach them and what they want in their lives, at that point. Really, is able to get them to buy into his culture there as well. I think he's doing that with the high school guys. He had a great recruiting class this year, and he's doing it at the portal as well. I'm actually excited to see what he does, in the portal. I know he's got another challenge. He's losing McCord. He's losing a handful of guys that were really key contributors. So I expect him and his team to be in there and getting as many guys as he can to help continue to build that depth. I just think I love his passion. You heard it like in that opening press conference with him a year ago, and you saw it, through interviews, up until this point. And then, I really loved it on the sidelines. There's a couple up close and personal camera shots of him where he is like super emotional and passionate about the game. And, sometimes you don't want to be the other guy on the other end of that headset listening to what he's saying, but and I'm not a professional lip reader, but some of the things he was saying, you might have to bleep them out, but I just think he's passionate and he's emotional, and I think that's it's a lot different than what we had in the past. I think Syracuse fans are kind of buying into it now that they've kind of seen the results that this guy's put out in the field. So I think he did a great job. I'm extremely happy. I think he's got the community behind him. I hope Wildhack did a really good job in kind of finding this diamond in the rough. I hope that he locks him up for a long-term deal at some point, because if Fran's successful next year and the year after that, that the SEC or the Big Ten is going to come banging down his door with a big bag of money. So I hope I hope we can, have him for, as he mentioned in his press conference, for 10 years or even longer to really, continue to build this program. So, very happy, and, I can't wait to watch them in the bowl game and then get 2025 underway.
Well, Brendan, we certainly appreciate the time again. Former Syracuse punter and captain, NFL punter Brendan Carney. Brendan, thanks for taking a couple minutes with us. We'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, Wes. Go Orange.
Welcome back to the Juice on the Cuse podcast on the Rivals.com and Believe Networks with my longtime colleague, Wes Cheng. This is Brad Bierman. And Wes, I have a final thought about something that I'm involved with for this college football season, and that is the revived Lambert Trophy voting. And we haven't had the final vote yet, but I'm going to reveal it exclusively here is how I voted for this year's Lambert Trophy. And I'll start with number 3, top 3 here. I settled on Army and Navy at number 3. Couldn't decide between those two teams. Both had great seasons, Army 11-2, Navy at 9-3. And of course, Navy upset Army this past weekend in Washington, D.C., to win the Commanders Cup trophy there. And number 2, I have Syracuse. So for Mr. Northeast, Fran Brown, the Orange finishing second among the Northeast schools in the revived Lambert Trophy, of course, at 9-3, playing Washington State in the Holiday Bowl coming up on December 27th. And the Lambert Trophy winner for 2024, the Penn State Nittany Lions, currently ranked number 6, hosting a CFP playoff game. And Penn State, the Lambert Trophy. Syracuse, better things for next year. Let's see what happens, Wes.
I like that. Number 2 in Fran Brown's first year and only upward to go, hopefully. And Brad, speaking of voting, wanted to close the show on Kyle McCord. He finished 10th in the Heisman voting. He led the country in passing yards, as we all know, 4,326 yards and setting program records in a single season with 29 touchdowns, 367 completions. So, Brad, I know you love the historical perspective here. So the last time Syracuse had someone that high, 2001, when Dwight Freeney finished 9th. Let's talk about some other players who finished in the top 10. Jim Brown, 5th in 1956. Ernie Davis obviously winning the 1961 Heisman Trophy. Floyd Little finished 5th twice, 1965, 1966. Larry Zonka, 4th in 1967. Don McPherson should have won the Heisman Trophy in 1987, famously and infamously finished 2nd. And then Donovan McNabb finishing 5th in 1998. Of course, the aforementioned Dwight Freeney. That's it. That's the list. So congratulations to Kyle McCord on an outstanding season.
I've always said, Wes, Syracuse should have had 3 Heisman Trophy winners. Brown in 56. Dick Schaap used to always say, by far the best player that year, not Paul Hornung at Notre Dame. And of course, as you just mentioned, Tim Brown at Notre Dame should not have beaten out Don McPherson in 1987.
That's it for us. For Brad Bierman, this is Wes Cheng. You've been listening to the Juice on the Cuse podcast presented by Believe in Rivals, and we will see you next time.